How many of you out there have had an old vine Zinfandel or some other kind of old vine wine? What makes it better? Let's find out. So in many types of fruiting trees and vines, there is a typical peak production life for commercial agriculture purposes, where you're producing the largest fruit and your yield is the highest. After a certain age, there is a point at which the vine's yield begins to fall off. The fruit becomes smaller, that maybe there isn't quite as much production as there used to be, but there's something interesting that happens. That is where the term old vine comes into wines, but that's true of a lot of other fruiting trees. So commercial agricultural plants tend to have ages of peak production. In apples and citrus, that tends to be 30 to 50 years in age, and in grapevines, that tends to be between 20 and 30 years in age. After that point in time, there's a botanical concept that happens called senescence, which some of y'all might remember from Freaky Friday.
Senescence, like senile, old people.
But the term occurs to plants too. So what happens is that typically the yields of fruit will become smaller, the fruit size itself will become smaller, but here's where the magic happens that makes old vine wines so special. The quality of the flavor compounds and of the aroma compounds in the fruit improves dramatically. Have you ever noticed how they have these big, beautiful, globular oranges in Whole Foods, and when you bite into them, they kind of taste watery. There's not really so much flavor. So it happens that during senescence, good things come to those who wait. As the fruit gets smaller, it means that the flavors are more concentrated. And so you end up having this strange phenomenon where fruit from old growth trees and vines ends up tasting better than fruit from newly planted trees. Now, the catch here is that oftentimes these fruits are not commercially available. That is, you're not going to be able to find them in a grocery store unless you happen to live near a place that has a ready supply of these locally, and that grocery store happens to actually work with those local sources. But that means, as I said earlier in my Ojai reel, superlative produce is always worth the drive. And as it happens, you might take in some beautiful scenery along the way. But the beautiful thing about fruit from old trees and old vines is that whatever you're cooking, whatever you plan to eat them plain, if they're going in your children's lunches, it ends up being a flavor that no one ever really can forget. If you're making your orange cranberry sauce for Thanksgiving, or if you're making apple sauces or apple pies, using old growth fruit imparts a special flavor. And certainly for Old California Botanicals, we use essential oils from old growth plants, and it has a more aromatic and more complex aromatic quality, which many of our OCB superfans out there can attest to. Now, why is it that older vines and trees have better tasting fruit? So there are several reasons why. First of all, there's a more complex root system that can reach deeper, and so there's more nutrients for the tree to draw upon in order to create better tasting fruit. It also means that there's a metabolic consistency inside the tree or the vine that allows for a better quality of produce as well. But where's the cutoff on an old vine or old tree? There's really no hard or fast rule, and it depends a little bit from country to country, but generally speaking, depending on certain parts of Europe or South America or Australia, the general convention tends to be that if a grapevine is somewhere in the 30 to 50 year range, that's when the wine coming off of those wine grapes can be called an old vine wine. There are additional increments in age that a winemaker can also advertise when they're talking about their wine grapes. So here in the United States, a wine that is made from fruit harvested from a grapevine that is 35 years of age or older is considered an old vine wine. At age 75, in certain wine regions in California, like in the Lodi region, that is when a grapevine can begin to be called an ancient vine. If you're looking in Australia, at age 70, a grapevine is called a survivor vine. At age 100, it's called a centenary vine, and at age 125, it is called an ancestor vine. In France and in Spain, A grapevine that in a wine producing region there that achieves the age of 50 years begins to actually achieve some sort of historic importance and may have some protections assigned to it. Now in California, many of our fruit producing regions are already at least 50 years in age, and some of them are even brinking on 150-year anniversaries soon. I just have to say, after growing up my entire life on old growth fruit, I've been ruined on anything else. The flavor is incomparable. So maybe we should start to think a little differently about our historic agricultural resources in California and appreciate them for the quality that they bring to our lives and to our dinner tables.